Hello, listeners. It's AZ, and I am here with episode 59 of the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. And today I had not one, but two very impressive guests. So I'm excited for you to hear about the research that they are conducting. But before I go too far, I want to give a very, very special shout out to my episode sponsor, Flame Decon. Flame Decon is an activated charcoal product that was invented by Tara Cornett in her kitchen. And she now is supplying firehouses and firefighters throughout the United States and probably the world with the soap that can actually decontaminate them after they're exposed to products of incomplete combustion. So as you know, cancer is a huge threat in the fire service. So this is just one step you can take to help decrease your risk. So I'm going to encourage you to head over to her website, www.flamedecon.com. Of course, I'll put it in the show notes for you. But head over to her website, check out her products, get yourself something nice, and decontaminate yourself after your next fire. Okay, as I mentioned, two very impressive guests in this episode, number 59. They are from Texas A&M University Commerce Campus, and my first guest is Dr. Michael Oldham. He has a Ph.D. in exercise physiology and nutrition. He works with human performance, stress, and recovery, and he has almost 30 years of experience in coaching, i.e., he's almost as old as I am. My second guest is his counterpart, Hussein Jabai. He is the founder and owner of Jabai Performance. He is an exercise science professional with a focus on tactical strength and conditioning. And those two men are doing some really groundbreaking research at their lab at Texas A&M Commerce. So I'm excited for you to hear what they have to say and maybe apply it to your training. Call to action today. If you would do me a solid and follow the podcast on whatever platform you listen on, that would be so great. And if you are so inclined to leave a review, it actually really helps me out. It makes the podcast more visible to other people. So without further ado, welcome Dr. Oldham and Hussein Jabai for episode 59. Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive. Hello, podcast listeners. It's AZ with the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast, and today I have the great honor of having two guests. Dr. Oldham, say hello.
Hello.
And Hussein Jabai, say hello.
Hello.
Hello. And these two gentlemen they're an interesting pair. I'm really excited to have them. They are collaborating on some research. You know, research is my favorite thing in the world. And so instead of getting started with the usual rapid fire questions, I am just going to turn the mic over to Dr. Mike and have him tell the people who you are. What do you do?
Thanks for having us on, AZ. I appreciate it. So I'm Dr. Michael Oldham from Texas A&M University Commerce, so just east of the Dallas area, and I'm the lead tactical researcher for the Roar HP Lab. I know.
That's such a cool name. Do you have t-shirts?
We do. We actually have swag, and so maybe we'll send you a little swag there. I'm actually wearing one right now, but you can't see it, but we have a motto on the back that says "Live stronger, live longer." So that's kind of how we roll.
Well, and you know what? I am actually a bit disappointed in you right now. I hate starting on the snow, but I am disappointed in your shirt choice. I was expecting something way fancier.
Yeah, my little fancy Hawaiian shirts. I know.
Yes.
But I had to rep the logo here today, so yeah.
All right. We'll take it. All right, let's turn the microphone over to your partner in crime, Hussein, and tell the people about yourself.
Well, I beyond appreciate you allowing us to be on here. But two, I also appreciate Oldham set a good expectation for time duration for introduction. Usually we rock, paper, scissors and see who gets to go first and so forth. But yeah, my name is Hussein Jabai. I am the tactical strength and conditioning subject matter expert for our Roar HP exercise physiology lab, where we work with different first responder entities and try to assist with injury mitigation, however that looks, it all being unique based on the entity.
Love it, love it. And if I remember correctly from our little phone call we had a few weeks ago, you are a master. You have a master's, correct? But you are not currently pursuing a PhD.
So
did I remember that right?
Yes. First of all, I would not call myself a master of anything, but yes, master's of science in exercise science from uniquely enough from Texas A&M University Commerce.
Yep.
So it's nice to be able to give back and work alongside the department.
Outstanding. Yes, I've had many a conversation as a fellow master's degree holder. I've had many a conversation with people about, should I get a PhD? Should I not? And it always comes back to, I don't think so. We'll see. More to follow.
Yeah. So that's, and just taking 2 seconds to kind of go on this, not necessarily tangent, but yeah, pursuing whether going the doctoral route or not, just making that pros and cons list and time investment and so forth. And like you mentioned, we kind of briefly talked about it and just weighing out what that program's going to do for the value you're going to bring to the industry.
Yeah. Well, we live in an age of we live in this age of certifications, right? And the more letters behind your name, and the old adage, get a college degree and immediately you get a job, right? And so the more letters you can have after your name certainly adds to your resume and adds to your, at least from our perspective, to your knowledge base.
Well, and I have been accused by former NSCA tactical manager Nate Palin of being a collector. I collect certifications, not so much the degrees, but the certifications. So I am trying to be a little bit more just refined when I'm picking those things from now on. Do they truly add value? Okay. I am super excited to sort of dive into the research that your lab has been working on. And I know there's some different avenues that you are sort of exploring, but the big one that I was really fascinated with was your work on hydration in tactical athletes. So, Dr. O, give us the 411. What are you looking at?
Well, that's a really good question. And what we first, how we kind of approach just general different problems in the tactical space is whatever entity and whatever municipality or whatever department that we're working with, we don't really go in and say, this is what we're doing. Come along with us. We more go into it going, what problems do you have? What questions are you seeing? You're all junior scientists anyway. That's just good science. You notice a problem and then you have a question. So that's how we kind of approach it. And we've partnered with Fluid Tactical in California to really look at rehab policies and rehab strategies, and then just good hydration strategies throughout the day while you're on shift. And what we found, I know this is going to be shocking to your listenership.
Put on your shocked face. Are you ready?
Right.
Okay, go.
No one knows. No one has a strategy. No one has a policy. No one has anything that remotely is based on good science. Every department that we've talked to, what's your rehab policy? Well, I mean, we have water on the truck. We have water in, the command vehicle. We've got Gatorade. We've got drip drop. We've got liquid IV, and you just run down the list. But nobody knows how to use them in an appropriate manner with data-driven ideas, right? So that's where we're coming in, is to say there's got to be a better way, and there's got to be a better way to start as a measurement piece. So even if it's as basic as, how do you feel today, right? How do you feel from a perceptive value? So in exercise science, we have something called rating of perceived exertion, RPE. And it's really valid. If you kind of internally know how hard you've worked for the day or for the shift or for the workout, whatever, you can pretty much quantize that pretty well. Well, we can do the same with hydration. How recovered do you feel? How hydrated do you feel? And most people should be able to give you on a 0 to 10. 0 being fully hydrated, 10 being, I have no idea why I'm here. I feel like the Sahara Desert. Most people can kind of get an idea of where they're at, right? So even if it's as basic as that of, okay, well, I'm at a 6 today. I should probably drink something. I'm at a 3 today. I feel pretty good. So we can have some discussions about protocols to, should I be drinking this or should I be drinking X product or, Y product? What we know overall is this. Water is better than nothing. Electrolytes are better than water, and there are better electrolytes.
I think we can probably just stop the podcast right now.
Right, that's my drop line right there.
Well, I'm going to throw this next question to you, Hussein, because I know you're going to know what to do with this. My department has, you're going to die. My department has these little paper charts in the bathroom with these yellow colors on them. And, it's everything from well hydrated to danger, danger, danger. This is bad. It's almost brown. And as a scientist, I've always looked at that and I thought, is that coming out of the body or is that mixed with the water in the stool? And if so, none of that is standardized. Like, how are those charts even worth anything? Tell me more.
One, on top with the charts, the hardest part with that is we're providing, let's say it's validated, it works, people see it, they go, okay, this is my hydration status. Let's just say that. Hypothetical, let's say that. Every person looks at this chart. Let's just start off with that and then say we make a comparison. But then what is step 2 and what's step 3, what's step 4, right? If people know, right, personnel know I'm dehydrated or I'm thirsty or whatever their indicator is. It could be that snazzy chart that's propped up there and it indicates that, hey, I am severely dehydrated. But then what do I do? What is that next step? Am I going out and just grabbing any kind of liquid? First of all, am I grabbing a liquid, something to hydrate with? Does it have to be liquid? Does it not? And then what does that look like? So the hardest part about those charts is we're trying to put a quick fix out there saying, hey, based on this color, this is your status. But we're not educating on step 2 and 3. We're not trying to provide additional resources. Again, it in my opinion, in many cases, it's great for that immediate contact. Hey, this is something. But my 2 cents in speaking for the team as well is there's got to be more. You have to add so much more resources to that. So unless you're educating on top of it, it's something that honestly you could probably ask and they've probably seen it so much, and then you bring it up, it might not be noticeable anymore. It's just part of the wall at this point, right? So I foresee it as kind of that quick fix, what we tried to do in the beginning, and then how can we educate beyond that? It's just one of the many resources that can be applied to the field.
Yeah, we call it the so what, now what effect.
I love the so what, now what.
Right. Yeah. And so, everybody uses it and it's really applicable in this case. So what? My urine is this color. Now what? So that's where the studies that we have currently are efficacy studies of post structure fire, post heat exposure. Can we give you a quantizable number and then be able to act on that? So we also use a really fancy little tool that measures the concentration of your spit. It's called MX3, and so look them up. Shout out to MX3.
The cooler part is watching people use it.
Yeah, that's just stick out your tongue.
I'm not a good spitter.
It's not even a spit. It's literally just like stick it on your tongue, and then you make eye contact with it. It's really odd, but
it's really weird.
But yeah, it gives us an actually concentration of the saliva in milliosmoles, sort of just a number, and it gives you even a kind of a rating, fully hydrated, moderately dehydrated, extremely dehydrated. And then we have an action pack beyond that. If you're between this range and this range, then drink this many waters and this many electrolytes in this sort of time period, retake a value, see where you're at, right? So really good cause and effect type of actionable type stuff. Super easy for the firefighters to follow, and they just know it as procedure, just coming off of a call. Boom, this is my rehab. Off I go.
I love it. And as we were talking about the urine chart, this came to mind. A gentleman, really nice gentleman, reached out to me via LinkedIn a few months ago, and I should have looked this up. It didn't even occur to me. They did develop a product whereby you actually pee in it or on it. It might be on it, and it measures your hydration. And my answer back to him was, this is designed for males. Where is your female product? And he said, well, the fire service, the sports arena, primarily males. We started with males. We're working on females. And I said, okay, I would love to talk to you more. Talk back to me when you have a female product. Is that something that you're familiar with? Do you know what that product is?
We're not, but it's probably based on pretty close to urine specific gravity measurements. Yeah. It's just going to be a color. It's going to measure the amount of urea that's actually in the volume. So it's going to be pretty specific.
So probably a bit better than my chart that's fossilized to the wall.
Yeah, very much so. And at least yours is maybe nice and says, danger. There's some charts out there in some Division I universities that says, if you're in the dehydrated, severely dehydrated state, you're a selfish athlete. You don't care about your brethren. You don't care about your program. Yeah, it goes really into the psychological warfare area. So we're not about that.
That's incredible. All right. So throwing it back to you, Dr. O, you said water is better than nothing. Electrolytes are better than water, and some electrolytes are better than others. I believe I got that right.
That's right.
So I know that there's a lot of products on the market. Many departments are still just doing Gatorade. So let's just take that off the table for right now. Let's talk about the actual rehydration products, such as Drip Drop, Liquid IV, Elements, any others you might be familiar with. Can you give us sort of the down and dirty on the differences in those products and just kind of give us your viewpoints?
Yeah. And this is also going to be one of those shock face kind of things. Not every product works for every person. I know.
Oh.
Weird. And there's even one, so really what it comes down to is two things. How much sodium and potassium is there? Not just sodium. It's not just about sodium. I know sodium's the favorite child in the family, but it's not about just sodium. It's sodium and potassium, a little bit of chlorine in there, awesome. But it's also about the glucose that's in there, or high fructose corn syrup, or whatever they've used as the glucose element in there. So you need both. You absolutely need both. The ones that are sugar free are, again, better than water. But if you have glucose in there with the sodium, it actually increases the uptake of the sodium and increases with that the uptake of water. So that's the cool part about it, is you've got to find that balance for you as to what is going to be the best for you, right? So some people like a lot higher sugar content because they feel like it refreshes them more. They're more likely to ingest that. It's more palatable to them, and therefore they're going to actually ingest more. Some people like a lot higher salty content, and they like to sip it throughout the day. And then there's sort of the medium ones in everywhere in between. And everyone kind of has their different formations or formulations. And so we actually did a comparison between two products from Fluid Tactical. One is their ORS, so oral rehydration solution, and then their electrolyte solution. So the ORS was a lot. Like, it was 816 milligrams of sodium and about 343 of potassium. That's a lot. That's enough to choke a good horse right there.
That sounds like the stuff you put on the edge of your margaritas.
Ooh, it is wicked. And so, but it also, I like it, but I'm a heavy sweater, right? And then their electrolyte was a little further down, but each one of them have very small amounts of glucose in there. Whereas the Gatorade, by comparison, had a lower sodium content, but a much higher glucose content at about 30 grams. So what we found was, in some guys, the Gatorade worked better, and some guys, the electrolyte worked better, and some firefighters, the ORS worked better. It just sort of depended upon them. And that was the beauty part about the study is Fluid was very transparent. This paper is actually coming out here in about the next 3 months. So Fluid was very transparent. They said, hey, we don't really care what the results are. We just want to know. So compare them. Everybody compares everything to Gatorade. So just compare them and see what happens. And the beauty part is they said, whatever the results are, get the results back out to the firefighters so they know what's good for them, which I thought was great. Like from a practitioner standpoint, from a scientist standpoint, I was like data. But as a public servant, right, and as a servant to this industry, we said we need to get this back to the guys, and the girls would just say, hey, look, this is what works for you, right? And so they were able to move forward. So it sort of solved the so what now what kind of thing.
I love it.
To add to that as well, one thing we have to do, and just researchers in general, those investigating more on the data collection and analysis standpoint, is bridging the gap between this is the data but realistically what's happening in the field.
Yeah.
Just like Oldham mentioned, this is what's great for you, but maybe this other product could have worked better. Let's just say hypothetically could work better, but you're more inclined to use this other product. Might not work as well, but you'll actually use it. You'll actually ingest it, right? So where's that trade-off? Science says this is better or worse or indifferent or not as efficient or whatever you might deem to the product or the formulation. But the goal is, how do you bridge that and say, hey, this works well for you. If you're going to do something, let's work on what that something is and get it as efficient as possible.
I love that approach very much. And let's just, we'll stay with you, Hussein. These products from Fluid Tactical, are they commercially available right now, or are these just research products?
Yeah, they've been available for many years now, usually depending on if it's an individual or an agency. Granted, individuals and agencies can go through their website to purchase their products. I always try and tie them into the loop with their staff, just because they can have further discussions of what's going on within the agency and how the company can actually support the efforts of each individual entity. But if you just want to go through their site and you just want to order through that process, that's available as well.
I gotcha. So we know that hydration and rehydration is important, but let's talk about why. What are some of the signs and symptoms that we could experience as a tactical athlete while dehydrated? Hussein, let's have you start from the field.
I mean, anything from first indicators, usually RPE and just overall fatigue, right? From whether it's from the field, most people don't associate being at the station, just operating within the bay and slowly dehydrating and whether it's fatigue, we mentioned urine output and color and so forth. But usually when thirst happens, that's too late in the aspect of hydration. They should already be hydrating. So hopefully that's a usual indicator. But hopefully that's not something we're always relying on is thirst in itself. But usually when I'm able to work with personnel, fatigue, concentration, reaction time, just a lot of the cognitive impact of being even slightly dehydrated. I see that a lot with more on the cadet side, where they're learning a lot of new things, and then they've learned it looks great in a controlled setting, and then they're outside or maybe during live burns or something. Just that accumulation, right? We think hydration in a single day, but they're slowly depleting throughout the week. And then you just see lack of concentration, being able to react, judgment calls. I see a lot more because PT goes some more, physical training goes more toward recovery and mobility. We make sure we're regulating what PT looks like versus occupational training. But when we do have time with them, it's being able to give more attention and awareness and effort. And you can tie in reaction time and balance. You can tie in all those performance indicators But at the end of the day, that's where, okay, now are you able to regulate all of that because of the impact of dehydration or just hydration status as a whole?
Well, and I think that kind of segues perfectly into one of the questions that my Instagram followers had put out. So, Dr. O, I'll bounce this to you. Man, words are hard today. The question specifically was, what, if any, does dehydration have as far as an impact on decision making? Well, we've already heard it does have an impact,
Yeah.
but can you go through a little bit of the science of how and why?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting and minutely biochemical cycle. So sodium and potassium, that's why I said, you really do have to have both. As a general standing, there's a lot of sodium outside the cell, and there's a lot of potassium inside the cell. And so just to send a nerve impulse, a single nerve impulse, whether that's to a muscle or to another nerve cell or to an organ or an effector organ, whatever, it takes a little bit of transport. And we've got to transport that sodium into the cell and potassium out of the cell, and then they've got to reset. Well, if those are in lower quantities outside the cell and inside the cell, because we've sweated them out, the ability to make that switch and fire that nerve is impaired. So you think about this on a large, grand scale, right? If I'm used to having 3 humongous piles of sand, and now I only have 1 pile of sand to spread across my driveway, then it really does hamper the ability for me to do my job. So from a decision-making standpoint, if I don't have that ability to switch ions, sodium and potassium, then the body's going to go through the process in a slower manner. It's still going to happen, but the manner in which it happens is going to be impaired by time constraints. So decision-making, mistakes, reaction time that Hussein alluded to, actual physical ability to tell your arm move, to tell your legs move, is impaired, right? That just the timing aspect of it is slowed extremely down.
And so the typical firefighter probably doesn't have at their disposal a lot of tools to measure their hydration status other than how they feel, the sort of that rating of perceived exertion that you talked about prior, and maybe that chart. But Hussein, let's talk about some strategies. I'm on shift tomorrow. So what should my strategies be today to get myself as ready as possible for my tour tomorrow?
Well, that's a loaded question in itself.
Oh, I love
you have
loaded
to.
questions.
I know, as if they aren't. But no, I mean, because so many different factors. What did yesterday look like? What did the day before? Right? And I like how you mentioned prepping for tomorrow, because it's not just, hey, it's the morning of, let's get hydrated, let's make sure we eat our calories, whatever they look like. Let's try and do everything the day of. It's front loading. It's the day before, 2 days before, a week before. It's making sure, even just hydrating, whether it's an actual tangible liquid or foods or different types of foods that have liquid within them in some form or fashion. Making sure we're consuming frequently, smaller amounts. Again, it depends on what does work. Okay, let's tie this in a manner of other occupations as well. Let's say you have kids. Let's say you work another job. There's so many different lifestyle factors that we have to take into account. Were you able to eat throughout the day? Were you able to even take sips of water or Gatorade or some form of hydration beverage throughout the day? Or is that something you have to take care of in the evening? Do you have to front load throughout the evening and try and consume as much as you can prior into the day? Now, it might not be the best bang for your buck, because then you'll be up all night. If you can, maybe throughout that prior day, maybe the day before, but it's trying to find some sort of routine or guide of saying maybe dispersing beverages every so often throughout your day, the day before, 2 days before, throughout the week, just making it kind of a staple, right? What are some guides for beverage consumption every so often? Tie in your meals. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have everything to the letter, milliliters to macros to, right? Not every single thing has to be perfect, but giving yourself a general guidance tool saying, hey, it's been 2 hours, 3 hours. Maybe I went outside and did some sort of recreational or rigorous activity to where I need to hydrate a little bit more, replenish some of the electrolytes and glucose and glycogen that I depleted throughout that duration. But I think a good mindset is assessing what does off shift actually look like to then add value to what hydration strategies are for that upcoming shift.
Got it. Dr. O, you look like you have something to add.
Yeah. And really, Hussein said it there, but he buried the lead there in a little bit there. The small sips throughout the day, and you see, the people with the monster, the gallon, the thing, you could fight off a war with it. But, or a hydro flask, right? Just if you have one of those kind of always available to you and you're taking sips throughout the day, the problem is culturally how we think we're supposed to drink and consume liquids is with meals. And we take them in 16 ounce or 32 ounce or 44 ounce consumption values. But if we just have that throughout the day, we're actually going to not have to be up all night. We're not going to have to be consistently going to the facilities. We're going to be able to hold that water and maintain that water. So that was the thing that I was going to say is throughout the day, pre-shift, are you consuming just consistently through the day? So that when you do wake up and you're ready for shift, you're ready for shift and you know it.
And I'm going to hit one more question on the hydration, which is, I'll say it again, water's better than nothing. Electrolytes are better than just water. Some electrolytes are better than others. Was that just regarding rehydration, or are you talking about always? So if I'm having a 32 ounces of water right now, today, before shift, should I be looking at electrolytes, or depends?
So electrolytes from our standpoint are really more of a rehydration strategy, just from sweat loss, just because that is going to be an exigent event where you're losing a lot of electrolytes in a single bout, either through heat exposure or long-term exertion. So what we typically think of is most of your sodium content and your potassium content is coming through dietary intake. Now, hopefully, we have better knowledge than the old adage of no more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium a day. We're past that. We're finding out that we need quite a bit more sodium than that, and especially if we're active, and especially if we're thinking, which this industry does both, right, at the same time. So we need a little bit more than that 2,000, closer to 2,500, 3,000 can be even better. So on a daily activity, if you're getting that in from an ingestion standpoint within your food, we do a neat little experiment with our undergrad students where we ask them to only eat fast food for a day. And
gross.
They're like, yes, I do that already. Awesome. Okay, now track it. Let's see what's in there. So, but you have to meet your macros. You have to meet your caloric intake requirements for your expenditure. So awesome. So they do that. They do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They map it all out. And what they find, shockingly, is that they consume somewhere between 5,000 and 7,500 milligrams of sodium, which is considerable, right? But if they don't have high exertion or heat exposure to that, that's too much. So under normal circumstances, if you're cooking for yourself, if you're cooking for the crew, the shift in the firehouse, you're probably putting sodium in it. The processed meats, you're going to have enough sodium on a daily basis. What we recommend is post-exposure, rehydrate with electrolytes.
Gotcha. All right. Oh, and I saw this other question. Someone posed on Instagram. She said, what is the protocol for basically rehydration post rhabdo? And my answer to her was usually that's going to be driven by a medical team, a dietitian, and a doctor. But I kind of answered for you. Is there more to that?
No, I saw that one. I was not touching that one. That's
Okay.
a medical one.
Always default to the appropriate practitioner. That's it.
Yeah. So we call it, I'm a doctor, so if somebody yells out in an airplane, is there a doctor on the, I stand up and I'm a doctor, but I'm a Ph.D, a poor hungry doctor. Whereas I don't mess with the MDs, the money doctors. So that is an MD cleared question.
Jay Dawes' daughter says, my dad's a doctor, but not the kind that helps people or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds like yeah, right. So yeah, from that perspective, from a rhabdo perspective, it's all about GFR, glomerular filtration rate. So how much the kidney's clearing, because rhabdo basically shreds your muscles, and protein then gets leaked in. The kidneys are going to try to filter it out, and it clogs up the system, right? So that's what a doctor is going to be able to deal with. But yeah, it doesn't matter how much water you're taking in, how much electrolytes you're taking in. If it's not being filtered out correctly, that's a physician's problem.
Gotcha. All right, tossing it back to you, Hussein. So we're done with the hydration, unless I missed something really specific. I want to talk about some of the other avenues you are exploring in the lab collaboration. The mic is yours.
Which route do I decide to go?
You get to pick your own adventure.
There's multiple. One that's intrigued me for a while, and lately, and Oldham already knows where I'm going with this, is being able to update defining the job from a performance metric, from a physiological standpoint. How do we build a profile? And every department's unique, every person's unique, right? But depending on the type of calls, depending on the terrain, and all these great environmental and agency-based factors, can we provide generalized profiles? But then in turn, can we associate assessments, fitness assessments, physical ability testing that correlate to those updated tasks? Because we have updated tools, technology, training tactics, or occupational application to those tactics, to where does that change what the job looked like 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Are there different performance metrics that tie to that? And then from a instructor practitioner standpoint, are there assessments or tests that correlate strongly with those new or updated performance indicators? And then that in turn provides a global perspective, right? Whether they're within an academy, we now have an aiming point, because most academies, we're just building, let's say 12-week academy, let's just say that. And with PT might be, let's give you training tools and resources. It might be, how much can we run you and how many push-ups we can have you do in 12 weeks. It could be, there's no kind of fitness program in place. But if we can provide these key performance indicators where assessments correlate, these assessments can be ran within the academy, and we know we're aiming for, let's say one assessment correlates very well with forcible entry, or with the stair climb with load carriage, or whatever the task might be. Let's say ventilation has probably updated in the past 10 to 15 years. We're no longer trying to poke holes in roofs. We're now able to utilize a saw, and we might have different tactics than we did 10, 15 years ago. Are there assessments that allow us to measure components of that? And then does that provide instructors with resources for prescription? Does that provide agencies for annual testing or new hire testing? But then does that also provide the difference in attributes between, let's say, firefighter status and then special operational teams? Right? Are there a difference in physical performance indicators, physical attributes between someone who is the firefighter and someone who is the firefighter plus hazmat plus these various specialty teams? But until we can go back and it could be expanding what's already there. I'm not saying literature is wrong. I'm just saying maybe there's updates in that, and then we can even further critique and utilize the literature that's out there and add in those assessments that strongly correlate to different tasks. And it just sets a foundation for so much. But that's just one. And I bring that up because that's a very big overarching project or thought process. I want to say it's a concept for now, but that's one thing. And it doesn't matter what operational group we work with. That is an overarching question everyone's asking, because then an agency wants to make or create their PAT, base it off of, what is your PAT based off of? What are the times based off of? What does your academy PT program look like? Why does it look that way, right? Like it would answer so much. It's just a concept that's so broad, and it takes so much effort. Many different entities provide or assisting with that effort. And it's just, is this overarching question every entity has that I say needs to be answered? It's a time and an investment for sure. That's just one.
You're also overcoming the idea of culture, and this is the way we've always done it.
True.
Right?
True.
So when you walk into a department and start looking at their PAT, and then all of a sudden we've got some questions, how open is the department to changing that based on data?
That's interesting. And in another podcast episode, it may have been the JDAWS podcast episode, as it turns out, we were talking about one of the agencies had a standard that you had to do 25 push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turns out, that the standard was 25 push-ups because that's the number that the chief could do. So,
no doubt.
Yeah,
no
we have
doubt.
a long ways to go. Okay. And I'm assuming that most of this research is in its infancy. You're not ready to share quite yet results or spoiler alerts or anything like that. Is that correct?
That's right. We have pilot study data that we're running the statistics on. That takes a little bit for us to just sit around and think about for a bit and go, okay, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
But it is also, as Hussein mentioned, it's different for every department, right? If you take a very urban department or suburban department or a rural department or a volunteer department or large, small, you name it, across, and then different geographic areas, right? A California wildfire guy, a girl down in the valley, they're gonna fight two different fires, right? They're gonna have two different daily activities, and the job task is way different. So honestly, that's where the tactical athlete has to be different. Unfortunately, and you know this, in the fire service industry currently, with the shortage of available, viable candidates and cadets, it's hard to go, no, I don't like you as much just because you don't fit our job profile. It's like, oh, you can speak words. Come.
Yes.
Fight fires with us, and so it runs into this vicious cycle in some ways, because then you have cadets who are not performing well, then you have incumbents who get into the job and go, well, this is what I thought the job was. So yeah, there's that aspect of really working with a department to go, what does your job task really look like? What do you think it is, and what do your firefighters think it is, and then how does that match to how you're measuring it? And I saw some of the questions, and how they posed that on your Instagram of, a PAT once a year, or a PAT upon hire to get
once
in.
and never. Yeah.
Once and never. Yeah. Yeah. That was a great one. Once and never. And then good to go for the next 30 years. You got this. High fives.
Yeah. Well, this raises, well, wait, let me first ask you this. So that was a big piece of the research coming out of your lab. So we have the hydration, we have the sort of key performance indicator studies. Yep. Are there other pieces of what your lab is doing that you didn't get to talk about yet, Dr. O?
You want to tag me into that one? There we go.
Yeah.
So we have probably the project that launched us into the tactical space. Thank you, Hussein Jabai and Jabai Performance. Where he literally cold called me and said, hey, you want to do some research? I'm working with a department, a little small one station.
That actually works.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Oh yeah, for sure. That actually, we even did an NSCA annual tactical training on that topic of reaching out to universities And maybe they just have, doc students or whoever. That's a whole other podcast.
I love it.
But right, but so we have the project called the Recovery Standard Project, and it is our mission as a lab to help departments figure out if their shift schedule works, right? And so the age-old battle of the 24/48 versus the 48/96, and then the Kelly people are like, what about us? And then we have a modified Kelly, and then we have the Bob's Your Uncle schedule. Like, I only work when my Uncle Bob works. Like that one, that's my favorite. But
I'm dying.
So we've got some data, and this is coming out in some papers here again in the next 3 to 4 months. We're really quite busy on the writing side of this, but we can give you a little peek behind the curtain as to what's going on with the Recovery Standard Project. So we did 3 months of study with a 24/48 and 3 months of study with a 48/96 on about 30 firefighters, men, women, captains, firefighter ones, EMS combos, just everybody you can think of. And we partnered with Whoop. So if you're familiar with Whoop, the Whoop bands, and who've been very gracious and very, very helpful in their tactical area. So Sienna and Rob there at Whoop Tactical are tremendous assets to the first responder and military community as a whole. So they said, yeah, let's do this. And so we've had some data to look at just a straight score of recovery, right? And how well do people recover? And in the Whoop sphere, recovery is based on how much and what kind of sleep you got, the quality of sleep. What does your resting heart rate look like? What does your HRV, your heart rate variability, look like? What does your respiration look like? All of those are combined into a total score called the recovery score. And if you just think about it in terms of percentages, 0% recovered, which Hussein has been close to about he laughs because he is
dabbling with the line over there for sure.
And to about 33% is considered red, right? You're just not recovered. You should probably take it easy for a day. 34% to 66% is considered moderately recovered or yellow. And then 67% and up, green, ready to go, ready to rock the world, go fight zombies. And so what we find in the 24/48, just generally with our groups, was that they don't recover. They don't recover well. They're in the yellow and the low yellows, like the 50s, low 50s all the time. Maybe a little bit on their first day off shift. So you feel a little bit better because you just were on shift the last day. But then you've only got one day off post that. And so they typically take a little bit of dive and then are a little worse after shift. So that they've got this sort of flat line, always somewhat recovered. And I'm not telling your listenership anything that you don't already know. Like, you just like, am I recovered? Kind of. How do you feel today? Kind of like I did yesterday, right? Like,
hot
this is
garbage.
right?
Hot,
just
hot
all
garbage.
the time. Just a hot mess all the time. So, but the 48/96 was a little interesting. So they actually got a little bit better after their second day on shift, just from the sleep scores were a little bit better from their habitual sleep, right? They knew where they were sleeping the day before, and that kind of thing. They went down the first day after shift, and then through the 4 successive days, they got progressively better into the low 60s. So still not in the green, but actually statistically significantly a little bit better, right? We're partnered with a fire department on the East Coast. I'll just say it that way. For the next year, we've been with them for about almost 6 months now. About a couple weeks shy of 6 months. On a 3-4 schedule, so kind of a modified Kelly. Just looking at how that compares, and some of the preliminary data on that is pretty horrible. Looking at the effects of one on, one off, one on, one off, one on, right? And if they work an overtime in the middle of that somewhere and they work a 72, it really has some detrimental effects on their recoveries. And it takes them quite a few days, much longer to recover. So than the 4896. So right now the 4896 is kind of edging out. So we just want to do this in a bigger and broader scale. And we've looked at the state of Texas, kind of pushing this across using the state association and working with them. But yeah, just, to see what does this look like in your particular area. And again, we talk about data-driven decisions. What is it working for your department? How is your department scheduling? And what is the data saying about lost work hours, workman's comp claims, injury rate, Mayday calls, medical mistakes for your EMS? Like, what is it saying about how is it tied to your shift? Is it tied to something else? Well, if you don't know and you go change all of these things, you just don't know. It's bad science, right? So the way that we like to think about our partnership with Whoop, and they can speak to this really well as additionally, is it's instead of a municipality saying, here's the policy and here's what we're doing to you, Whoop allows you as the individual to make those decisions from the bottom up. Oh, this is my recovery, and I did these things yesterday, and it caused this sort of scoring. Can I do a little science and see if I can modulate that a little bit? So that's kind of the Recovery Standard Project in a nutshell.
I have two things to say about that. First off, if you would like to do research on a smallish department in Illinois, I think I know someone. 2448 is our I'm sorry, the small department schedule. A second question on that: how did the Uncle Bob schedule work out for recovery?
I have no idea.
That's definitely for you. I know.
That's me working when I work, and my Uncle Bob works as well. So.
but I also want to add a little bit to that, and Oldham did a great job outlining the study in itself, and then also emphasizing that that it's not just this is our agenda to come in and go, okay, this is your schedule, this is the schedule we want to get it to, or this is where we want to shift it. Every entity we work with, and the ideology behind it is, yes, there is that you can compare two different sets of data, fantastic. But the relationship with these agencies and the collaboration with the agencies, we go in and saying, yes, this is a research study, but it's an observation of your personnel as a whole. This is the status. This is the indicators for personnel within your agency. Mm-hmm. So think of this as tier one. We operate in a 3-tier system. Tier one is just observation, what is happening. And then tier two is let's implement maybe 1, maybe 2 interventions. Let's change something. And then by the time you get to tier 3, you've gone through the process multiple times, and then you're funding whatever that decision is, whatever the solution is. You're now funding and empowering that those steps, or those, whether it's integrating personnel or interventions. But tier 1 is observation. So when we're working with entities, it's what does tier 1 look like for them? And for some agencies, and for the agencies that are within this study, that was their question. Where are we at? Where do we stack up just individually as our agency? And then that data can be compared to other shift schedules. But the thought process initially, and every time we work with an agency, is, okay, sometimes command staff might have that ambition to already stack 2 shift schedules side by side and compare. But we also want to empower and encourage and say, hey, okay, let's compare the 2, but also see this as just an overview of a observation of the uniqueness of the agency in itself.
Yeah, and this is not a new study, and I'll just say that right out. I mean, good science sort of jumps on the shoulders of other good scientists, and so there's been studies into this. There's really good studies out there using the PSQI, the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, right? It's a great instrument, but I would say if you had a department who was considering switching to 4896, who were currently 2448, or who are currently on a Kelly, And they knew that going in, and they said, okay, we're going to be able to use the PSQI as our instrument to measure, effectiveness. And they were even going about it to say, we're going to be our own control group. We've had a department approach us about being their own control. We're on 2448 right now. We'll have you monitor us for 3 months, and then we're going to switch the entire city to 4896 for 3 months. And we thought, oh man, that is the definition of a control, right? Aggressive, controlled study, because they are their own control. And so where Whoop would provide data that you can't get around. Like there's no way to fake that data. There's no way to bias that data. Sometimes with the PSQI, if you're using that as a decision maker process, that's probably not the right instrument for you. So again, it comes down to what is the question you have? What are you really trying to do? Are you just trying to establish a baseline of where you're at? Do you have a decision you're trying to make here? Are you trying to prove something that maybe HR is coming at you and saying, hey, look, like this is the fourth time that firefighters wrecked that truck, and it's after every 4-day overtime that they worked, right? So can we have some data to support this? So yeah, I mean, I think that's where the Recovery Standard Project comes in, is to say what's currently happening for you right now. What is a snapshot, and not even really a snapshot, but what is the longitudinal data? We like the old adage, more data, better data. Right? So how, if you've got this 3 months or 6 months worth of data, that's hard to get around and say, well, it's just one time, right? Or it's over a week. And, 1 week is vastly different than the next week.
And I'm really excited for you to publish this data, because a lot of people reach out to me and they ask, is there great research on the shift schedules? And it's a little bit few and far between. So no pressure, but hurry up.
Right. And we're happy to consult with departments on that aspect and just let them know, what we think.
I love it. All right. I want to be very respectful of your time. You guys have been so wonderful. I want to flip the microphone back to Hussein for likely the last time and see, do you have parting thoughts, words of wisdom, gems or jewels for the listeners on anything?
On anything. If you don't already, reach out and find resources. Even being a resource, even our entity and us as individuals and professionals being resources, we still reach out to other professionals as resources. So whether you are personnel within the agency or you're the practitioner, the instructor, find those resources, find those outlets, find different networking circles to just talk shop, pick the brains of other individuals, because there will be a time, either you either have a question you need an answer to, or you have yet discovered that you have a question. So my best advice is reaching out and slowly, but with high quality, gathering resources for yourself and for the community.
Whoa, that was pretty good.
Good.
Dr. Rowe, do you think you can step up and hit it out of the park too? I bet you can.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with two sort of short phrases. Water is better than nothing. Electrolytes are better than water, and there are better electrolytes. I like that. I keep saying that one.
That's pretty darn good.
Right? And then move every day. I'm going to take a page out of my partner's here's textbook of move every day. Don't let there be a day where you're not moving. And if it's literally just simply mobility stuff, if you saw Hussein in person, you'd probably like walk to the other side of the sidewalk. Like he's a big guy, right?
He's a big guy.
He's a big guy, and I'm a triathlete by trade, or at least by hook and crook here lately. And so we continually beat ourselves up and just do physical stuff, but in an effort to move every day. And I know that the tendency is with firefighters who are exhausted and on those off days, as simple as it sounds, a simple 10-minute stretch, mobility, open the hips up, open the shoulders up. Not only is it going to help you mitigate, any injuries that you may have and are accumulating, but it's going to help you prevent those types of injuries. But in the end, movement is our way of resetting our brain. It is a way for us, in small doses, to eat up the epinephrine and norepinephrine, the adrenaline that's rushing through you guys, that on a daily basis. So it's a way to just mitigate that overall stress. So just move a little bit. It doesn't have to be crazy. Just move a little bit.
And you know what's really funny? This theme keeps coming up over and over and over again. Exercise and movement are medicine.
Yep.
So, well, it has been my great pleasure to talk to you today. Almost an hour. Ooh, it's the longest podcast for Fire Rescue Wellness, but I think that everything we talked about was absolutely fantastic and amazing. I will put not only the link to your lab in the show notes. So if you want lab swag, is that how you get it?
No.
Through the lab website? No? Oh, okay.
We'll send you some lab swag.
I get lab swag. Okay, so I will put the link to your lab, though, in the show notes. Your social media handles, when applicable. Email's okay, too?
Email's great.
All right. Well, with that, this has been AZ and Hussein and Dr. O for the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast, and we are officially out.